Welcome everyone to today's notice of call of a special city council meeting, Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. I now call this meeting to order.
District
call,
1,
please.
Councilmember Casey.
Present.
District 2, Councilmember Vieira.
Here.
District 4, Councilmember Martinez, absent. District 3, Vice Mayor Silvera.
Here.
Mayor Lopez.
Here. Please stand for the invocation by Chris Henry from the Hope Tree Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we come before you, for your throne of grace today, asking for your mercy, forgiveness of our sins for those that we've committed knowingly and unknowingly. Father, I pray first for wisdom in this council, that every decision made this evening will be for the betterment and the wellness of this city. Lord, I pray also for peace as we anxiously await the results from this painfully long California election season. Lord, I also pray as these men and women have given of their time and of their lives to protect, serve, and guide this city, that you return the blessings to us. Bless this city that I love so very much, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much. Citizens Communications. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in City Council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes. Resolution 2007-106. Members of the public interested in addressing the City Council during the special meeting may address the items which have been described in the notice of the special meeting in accordance with Government Code, Section 54954.3. Anyone wishing to address the City Council must adhere to the rules of decorum. The rules of decorum are posted outside the chamber doors. Is there any members of the audience who would like to make a comment at this time? Go ahead.
Mr. Lopez, thank you for this meeting. I just want to touch bases on what we touched a week ago about the carports.
So I don't know if you noticed this, but Mr. Councilmember Martinez is not here today.
Oh, that's right.
So
Okay.
so the item that everybody saw online has been postponed.
Okay.
So that way it gives him an opportunity to present the item.
I want to thank you for standing up, what you said on the second thing that about the council, that you guys did not vote to enforce that. I just want to thank you for standing up for the community, and
Thank you.
thank you. And yeah, so we'll touch bases on the when she's here, but we got quite more people coming up. They got more
No,
letters.
That's no problem. Anybody's more than welcome to make a comment, but we're going to postpone that until the next meeting.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Hello, Mr. Lopez. Nice
you
to
doing?
see you. I'm a student at Stan State. I'm completing an assignment for public policy, and I'm just interested in how decisions here impact local resources and services. Could you share more about the timeline and expected benefits of the improvements proposed in the capital improvement program, particularly the ones regarding any impact on parks and recreational spaces in Syracuse?
Mr. Prado, that is item number 14. And when we open up the public hearing, we'll have you ask that question again, and staff will be more than welcome to answer that question. But thank you for the introduction.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Seeing none. Anybody online?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any emails?
There's no emails that will be read into tonight's record since it's a special meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Citizen communication is now closed. Moving on to conflicts of interest. Is there anyone on the council that would like to declare conflict of interest. Councilmember Rosalinda Vieira.
Yes, item 8 involves my employment, so I would like to abstain from that or recuse myself from that conversation and vote.
Noted. Moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be acted and upon by a roll call vote. Is there anybody in the council that would like to consent item pulled besides item number 8? Seeing none. Is there what? She's abstaining. Yeah, she has to leave for that one particular vote, yeah. So now I'll go to the members of the public. Anybody would like to pull an item on the consent calendar? Seeing none. Nobody online?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, so this goes back to the council with the exception of number 8.
Like a motion to approve items 1 through 7, 9 through 11 on the consent calendar.
Looking for a second. Mr. Casey?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Aye.
Councilmember Vieira,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-0.
thank you. Item number 8. Councilmember Rosalinda will excuse herself and we'll move forward. Is there any members of the public that would like to make a comment on item number 8? Council, any comments? Bring this back for a motion.
Move to approve number 8.
I'll second. Roll call.
Councilmember Casey,
No.
Councilmember Vieira abstain. Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Okay, moving on. Let's get Rosalinda back in here, please. Moving on to unfinished business. Resolution 2024 approving the use of the remainder of the American Rescue Plan funding. And this will go to our Finance Director, Shannon.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. The item before you tonight is a review of the Life to Date American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA projects, and for the council to provide direction and approve a resolution allocating the remaining ARPA funds. On March 11th, 2021, Congress passed ARPA to help local governments with the COVID-19 recovery, and the city received a total of $11.6 million. These funds may only be used for replacing lost public sector revenue, public health and economic impacts, providing premium pay for eligible workers, and to invest in infrastructure. Treasury established the legal stipulations that ARPA funds can only be utilized for expenses incurred by December 31st, 2024, specifying that a cost is deemed incurred if the recipient has taken on an obligation by that date. Per the Treasury, the following items are not obligations: an adopted budget or budget amendment, an appropriation of ARPA funds, an executive order, a resolution, a written or oral intention to enter into a contract, a grant or legal authority to enter into a contract, claiming funds under the revenue loss category, moving ARPA funds to the general fund as revenue loss, but not further reestablishing an obligation with those funds by December 31st, 2024. On June 18th, 2024, the City Council approved the use of $1.5 million in ARPA funds to bridge the funding gap as part of the standard allowance for revenue loss, as allowed by final rule of the Treasury. To ensure those funds are fully utilized and to establish an obligation, staff recommends the items included in the attached budget journal be obligated for the use of ARPA. As of October 28th, the city has spent a total of $8.1 million. Those expenditures include a number of projects, including public safety projects, parks projects, premium pay for essential workers, community programs, and various other city initiatives. While most of these projects are complete, there are some that are still in progress. An additional $2.9 million is already obligated to complete those projects. And those are outlined in the staff report. As of today, there is $624,000 of ARPA funds remaining to be obligated prior to the deadline. Staff created a list of projects that could be completed prior to the deadline or obligated via a contract, MOU, or purchase order. Those items include the grid prune program, an emergency tree removal program for public works, police dispatch equipment, cubicles and ADA accessible counter for utility billing, completion of Tyler implementation for finance and HR, wall-mounted first aid kits, defibrillators, and a CELA license. Staff discussed these items with the related departments, and all departments provided assurance that the projects could be completed or obligated prior to the deadline. City staff are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there any way that you can post that list for everybody to see? While you work on that, the public comment period is now open. Is there anyone in the chambers that would like to make a comment on this item?
Gene Yeakley series. Is that 600 or so thousand, have the different departments already give their information what they'd like to use it for and the amounts? So in other words, I guess everybody has from different departments, when they know that money's left, that they have an idea, well, I could use some, another department said I could use some. So how do they determine that, where it goes? And does it have a priority list? Like, of course, law enforcement would be first, you know, anything to do with safety and stuff, and then go down the line. Or does it go the other direction? Whoever wants it first come, first serve kind of thing. Do they get the allocation out of that 600,000 that supposedly left? Can she answer that?
Would you like to, could you answer that, please?
Mr. Yeakley, so what it was we actually reached out to all the departments and gave them a timeline to respond back to us, and this is the responses we have received, sir.
So the first department that responds first with whatever amount they want or they need, let's say not want, but need, then they're on the top of the list instead of prioritizing things?
No, we prioritized what everything came in, and this was the list that we came up with. And we didn't have anything outside that list at the time.
So am I correct if law enforcement and all the other departments put in at a certain deadline, that I would assume that law enforcement or some other department would be higher priority to get what they want, right?
They asked for a specific amount, and that's what we gave them.
Yeah. I don't think you're answering my question. Was it priority? I can't even say the word. Was there an order?
Did we
Was there-
prioritize? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Was there an order?
No,
No.
we did not. We tried to fulfill everybody's needs at the time, and what we had cut before, we tried to replenish. And so what they asked for is pretty much what they got.
So everybody that asked got something from departments.
We tried to make that, yes, sir.
All right. So much for that answer.
Is there anybody else? Any hands raised?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. The public period comment is now closed, but we'll bring this back to the council for discussion. And Councilmember Rosalinda Vieira, your button has been pressed.
Thank you. Couple questions. I guess one is what dispatch equipment what is that exactly for? I noticed there weren't any LPR cameras, or I think they were looking for a trailer as well. I noticed that wasn't on there, which I think the police department had requested they were interested in. And then lastly, the pruning, I was wondering if that is through the end of December of next year, since we have to allocate it or expend it by the end of next year, or just through June 30th, which is the fiscal year.
So in the timeline that was asked, the police department asked for the dispatch. The cameras were not asked for at the time. Technically, the LPR program is completed. All the traffic intersections that have traffic lights have an LPR camera currently. There was not any ask for a camera at the time. The pruning program, I believe, runs through a year because we have to have a contract signed, and that's what we're after. And because originally when we took this before the council and we cut it, this is what the director was asking for 1 year's time. So we believe it's going to be taking us through December of next year.
Dispatch equipment.
Trenton? Captain?
That's actually for monitors for the dispatch center.
Councilmember Casey?
So we asked staff, did we reach out to the public at all, letting them know that we had the 600,000 we needed to spend before the end of the year? I'm curious about the water tower. You know, we talked about that since I've been on the council, and it's never really been brought up. But really, the 600,000 is quite a bit of money, and I just wonder. Maybe we did at our last council meeting, we knew we were going to have this surplus. Gave the public an opportunity to have some input.
What staff was looking at, sir, was basically we have to be able to have this spent and contract signed by December 31st. For us to go out to the public and ask for input, that would be having them come this time. We then have to try and get a contract in place, which is going to take 30 days or so to try and make that happen, because we have to go out for an RFP. And then after that, we'd bring them back to council, which we would have to have a special council meeting sometime in late December to make that happen. On the water tower, I'm sorry, I skipped that. On the water tower, originally it was, I think, $589,000 just to have somebody. We have not had a new update, what it was going to cost after the inflation, because I believe that was several years ago. We believe it was going to be higher, and then we'd have to have somebody come out here, analyze it, study it, the integrity of the metal and everything, and then come back, and then we'd have to have a contract signed. That would have to happen within 45 days.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Okay. Looking for a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve item, what was that? Sorry, I don't have it, I'm on the item 12 on the agenda for the use of the ARPA funds. Motion to approve resolution approving the use of the remainder of the ARPA funding.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
No.
Councilmember Vieira,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera.
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1.
Moving on to another public hearing. Resolution 2024, adopting the updated various users and regulatory fees and charges. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor and council members, as you recall, we commissioned a user and regulatory fee study back in 23-24, about June of 23. The proposed fees are set forth in the comprehensive user and regulatory fee schedule for consideration and adoption by the council, and the user and regulatory fees are set at the direction of the City Council at the conclusion of a public hearing to consider adoption by any of these new fees or fee increases to make it effective in 60 days. I have Terry Mattson here from ClearSource Financial Consulting, who's going to do a presentation on the study and the Nexus study that he did for the user and regulatory fee. So I'll turn it over to Terry.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. As mentioned, my name is Terry Mattson. I'm here from ClearSource, and our firm helps communities throughout the state identify costs of providing specific services and fee schedule and prepare fee schedules that help you recover the cost of providing those services. The city's recently concluded what we call a user and regulatory fee study. I'm going to walk through an overview of that study and then findings and recommendations specific to Ceres. I know you have a full agenda, so I will do my best to avoid being long-winded and leave time for question and answer. I have about 25 slides to walk through, but I'll make my way quickly through those slides. Thank you. So just by way of agenda, we'll talk about some background regarding fee setting in California and cost recovery, some fundamentals and terminology that apply to all cities in the state, what we specifically see in Ceres, and then we'll talk through next steps for the City Council to consider. By way of background, this concept of fees and charges, cities typically collect fees and charges when we can identify a direct receiver of service rather than a community-wide receipt of service. So typically what we think of is we have our tax revenues, our property tax and sales tax revenues, and we use those as much as possible in communities to provide general, broad, community-wide benefit, things like public works services, public safety services, park maintenance services. But when we see a direct receiver of service, we typically use fees and charges. And most of the time here, we're thinking about plan review for development projects, inspections, permit issuance, specialized licensing, and so forth. It's important to note what is not being examined in this study or the council is not being asked to consider. This study does not examine any taxes, any assessments, any utility rates or development impact fees. So the things that we encounter on a day-to-day basis as residents and businesses in Ceres, we are not examining those this evening. This would be discrete, discretionary, periodic actions that are being considered. Things like building fees for new construction, planning fees, engineering and encroachment permit fees when somebody wants to make dedicated use of the right-of-way, if we want to reserve city facilities for a specific use, and then just some administrative fees for licensing and so forth. That is what we're thinking about in this topic this evening. Just some fundamentals and terminology that apply to all communities in California. Why do we even do fee studies? Why do we examine our fees? We do have legal requirements that are outlined for us in the California Constitution and the California Government Code. We want to make sure we comply with those requirements when we set fees. We want to encourage recovery of costs when we find a direct receiver of service. By definition, most of these services occur within general fund departments. And so when we recover the costs of providing general fund services, it frees up our general fund resources to be used for other broad community-wide services. And then I think this final bullet is important. The idea that when we recover our costs of service, it helps us continue to meet the service level expectation of the community. So if we recover our costs, it helps us continue to provide services. I mentioned this idea behind legal requirements. The legal requirements around fees are, we don't want to turn this into a profit-making endeavor. We want fees to be linked to our cost of providing services, but not exceed our cost of providing services. And when we think about costs, we think about this idea of full cost of service. So we're thinking about labor that's providing the service, whether it's your own in-house labor or contract service providers, the salaries, the benefits. We think about the uniforms, the vehicles they use to provide services, the support they receive in order to be able to provide services like HR, finance, technology, and so forth. Because these are fees and not taxes, they are approved by the city council. So at the conclusion of a public hearing, the city council considers whether to adopt updated fees. A fee schedule is intended to be a dynamic document. So we encourage fees as cities as just a matter of practice. As you're thinking through your annual budgeting and so forth, and you're looking at your various recovery categories, fees would be something you examine, and you typically might make some inflationary adjustments to them, or you'd ask departments, do you have some refinements to make? So you perform studies like this only periodically, maybe every handful of years, but in those in-between years, the goal would be to not leave fees static. You live in an inflationary environment, and so when fees are left static over time and your costs increase, your cost recovery doesn't stay the same, it actually reduces, even though nothing has changed in your fee setting. So that's the idea here, is that you would consider them, you would have opportunity to adopt them, and then you'd have opportunity to refine them from time to time. They're not frozen for eternity. Just some terminology. In some of our workplaces, we may use phrases like subsidy or cost of service. And so we just want to make sure that when we use them, we're thinking through speaking the same language as it relates to this topic. So full cost of service, I explained that. These are service-based fees. So some service is being provided either by your own in-house labor or contract service providers, but we're trying to value that service. When we think about cost recovery, it's this idea of, if something costs us $500, do I recover all of that from the fee payer or only a portion of that? That would be my level of cost recovery. And then in this case, subsidy would be the difference between what it costs me as a city to provide a service and what I collected from the receiver of service. This idea of cost of service can be expressed mathematically. If you look at this table, because it's service-based fees, we're thinking about that idea of there's an hourly cost of service. Let's say that hourly cost of service is $150 an hour, and maybe something takes us a certain amount of time typically to provide, like 2 hours. So we would say, oh, we have a $150 cost of service and 2 hours of time. So that's a $300 cost to the city to provide that service. And then the question becomes, do you want to collect $300 for the service being provided or some other amount? And usually councils use concepts like this to think through cost recovery policy. And the idea is when you see a clear receiver of service, a clear beneficiary, you typically target higher cost recovery levels. When you see a more broad community good being provided, you typically target lower cost recovery levels. So example might be if I choose to remodel my kitchen and I'm going to be the one that benefits from the enjoyment of that remodel, the enhanced property values and so forth. Communities frequently target full cost recovery for that because I'm the direct receiver of service. But occasionally, if I have a community pool and I value people's ability to learn how to swim, and I know not everyone can have a pool, and I think there's a public safety issue, I might subsidize aquatics fees. That would be an example of lower cost recovery because an idea of community-wide benefit. So the subsidy that we're talking about here is just the difference between what it costs us to provide a service and what we collect. And that's important to note because what it costs you to provide the service doesn't actually change. So let's say a service costs Ceres $500 to perform. You have to perform a couple field inspections and maybe some plan review, and that is a $500 cost of providing that service. If we choose to collect a fee of $100, the city of Ceres still incurred a cost of $500. It just recovered $100 from the receiver of service. The other $400 had to be paid from some other revenue source in Ceres, and that's typically your tax dollars. So those tax dollars compete for priority. You have sort of like unending need or massive need and limited resource. And so the idea is this a place you want to use that limited resource, or do you want to target higher levels of cost recovery? That's what you're thinking of through in this concept. Now that is common. What we just described is common to municipalities throughout the state. If your neighbor did a fee study, they'd be thinking there are the same concepts. In Northern California, they think there are the same concepts, and in Southern California, they're using that same fundamental concept. In Ceres, what we see is it has been some time since fees have been adjusted, and so we do find room for enhanced cost recovery. And what we're thinking through here is, can we build you schedules that are easy for the community to understand, that would be conducive to online permitting, and like contractors could work with their resident population for minor permitting and so forth. And so that's what we've strived to develop here, is to get you a building fee schedule, which is your most commonly requested type of fee, building permit fees, to get fixed fees in place for commonly requested permits like water heater changeouts, HVAC changeouts, residential re-roofs and so forth, rooftop solar, to get some fixed fees in place for those. And then for the most complex projects, to make sure fees scale to reflect that level of complexity. So less complex, lower fee, more complex, higher fee because higher level of effort. We do target full cost recovery here because there is that idea of direct beneficiary, direct receiver of service. In the planning world, what we see is that cost recovery varies really widely depending on the fee we're examining. And so one fee may have pretty good cost recovery today, and another fee may have very low cost recovery. And it's just how it works out in fee studies. When we examine fees over time, you may just have a low fee in place for something that's very complex in nature. So we've just recalibrated the fees to reflect primarily full cost recovery, but there are some areas where you might target just a little less than full cost recovery if you want to avoid deterring people from being able to appeal and so forth, and some minor permits that you may want to encourage applicants to come and connect with you to help with community beautification and so forth. But again, these fees are primarily regulatory in nature. There is a high degree of benefit from the property enhancements, the increased property values, and the goal is to, as much as we can, avoid having other Ceres residents and businesses subsidize individual private construction activities. And I think that's one of your broad council goals and values. On the engineering and encroachment side, this is when we're dealing with land development, land improvements, and encroaching in the city right-of-way. Cities typically target full cost recovery for these services. We've adjusted the fees to look towards full cost recovery. On the recreation and facility rental fees, that this is an area of unique challenges, an area where communities don't make it to full cost recovery because there is that idea of community-wide good here and public benefit. Your community services departments in California, they're just facing challenges, right? They have, they usually rely on seasonal labor, and that seasonal labor, the California minimum wage has increased mandatorily over the last several years. You have increased insurance costs and utility costs, all sorts of increases in costs that are sort of outside of their realm of control. And so they do face unique challenges. In their world, what we're proposing is to generally adjust fees by about 18%. These fees haven't been adjusted in many years. That 18% represents your regional cost inflation over the last 5 years. So if you just annualize the last 5 years of cost inflation, it would work out to just over 3% a year. And that's what we're proposing to adjust for these fees. And that the reminder here is the goal is not increased cost recovery. The goal is to avoid decreasing your cost recovery. And so when we leave fees unchanged in an environment where costs are increasing, cost recovery doesn't stay the same, it actually goes down. And so all you're trying to do is keep pace with that inflationary environment that you're dealing with. On the public safety side, public safety services are typically tax-funded services. That's where we do see that broad community-wide good. There are very few fee-related services linked to public safety services. Might be like specialized reporting they provide, or when they have to impound a vehicle for suspended license and so forth. So there are a few cases of direct receiver of service. These are the fees we're adjusting, and all we're doing is trying to adjust to align to cost of service. And in this world, you have some state limitations. We align to state limitations. You have a fire prevention world. That's for reviewing construction for compliance with fire code. You adjusted fees for these services in 2023. So the only thing proposed is an inflationary adjustment that the city council previously authorized. No other changes here. And then on the administrative fee side, again, it's just aligning very few fee-related services, but just aligning those fee-related services to your current costs and state mandated amounts. So that's what you're seeing in this update. We did talk about the idea that a fee schedule is intended to be dynamic, and the goal would be not to leave fees stagnant for a multi-year period. When we hear from the development community, one of the things they express is this idea of they like to avoid, major spikes. And so they'd rather see a pattern of general increase rather than flat forever and then 100% increase or something like that. So most of the communities we work with have authorized annual inflationary adjustments in between studies like this. And your resolution that's before the council proposes that. It says that from year to year, you would adjust these fees by the change in regional cost inflation not to exceed 5%. So if you have some bizarre inflation to the upward side, you would still protect your fee payer with a cap. The idea behind these fee adjustments, again, we talked about that general fund revenues that you can use for other broad community-wide services, keeping pace with general cost inflation, avoiding those fee spikes, helping you as policymakers when finance is trying to give you forecasts. If we know there's some predetermined annual inflationary adjustments, it helps with annual forecasts. Collecting our costs of service helps us keep providing services out to the community. And then that idea of generational equity. A lot of people think this is an important one when we bring it up is if my cost of service today is $200, but I pay $0, and then tomorrow somebody pays 200, there is some generational inequity there, right? I got a service for free and they are paying. And so just the idea of when the receiver is receiving service, we're recovering the cost of that service, not trying to make a profit, but just recover the cost of service. In terms of fiscal impact, we anticipate if the council adopted the fees as proposed, there would be a general fund impact of about $200,000 across these broad range of fee categories, but that would be linked to the general fund. And what's important to note here is this is fiscal impact to offset the costs of existing services that you're providing. So it's not to fund a whole bunch of new employees or service level enhancements. These are costs we have right now, and we're just not recovering the costs of those services from the receivers of those services. And so we would call it enhanced cost recovery. For next steps to consider, because these are fees, they are considered by the City Council at the conclusion of a public hearing. And because there are development-related fees in this topic, you have a 60-day window before any fees could go into effect. So you could make them effective beyond 60 days, just not sooner than 60 days. The resolution before you says, if you chose to adopt an updated fee schedule tonight, the adjusted fees would go into effect 60 days from now. Thank you so much for your time and attention. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions or feedback, I'm available to receive them.
Thank you very much. We'll begin with opening up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the chambers or attending on Zoom that would like to make a comment on this item?
So, Mr. Lopez,
Were you going to do number 13 as well, or 14?
Oh, 14. Did I come at the wrong time?
The next one.
Next one? Okay, good. Sorry.
What would you like to do? You want to make a comment on this one as well?
I think you did.
Or do you want to wait till the 14?
14. Yeah. I'll wait till 14.
Okay, sounds good. You'll get it after you start coming to a couple meetings.
Okay.
You'll be good at this. Okay, you can go ahead and sit down, and then right when we start on number 14, we'll call you back. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Anybody on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
No emails? Bring this item back to the council for any comments and or questions. Councilmember Rosalinda Vieira.
Thank you. Just for general clarification, because I thought I heard something different. I heard you say you were adjusting the fees by 18%. It looks like some of these may be adjusted at different percentages, and I just wanted to get some clarification that the fees that are noted in here in red are actually based on surrounding fees and actual costs, and not just a flat 18% across the board.
You have it correct. I apologize if it came out confusing. There is a certain category of reservation fees that are increasing by 18%, but in your other categories, they may adjust by a different level than that. So it's unique to the service provided.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has a question? The council? Seeing none. Bring this item back for a motion. Anyone?
Okay, motion to approve resolution approving the, oh no, what number we're on? Okay, sorry, adopting the updated various user and regulation fees and changes.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
Aye.
Councilmember Vieira,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, moving on to resolution 2024, approving the 5-year 2024-2028 capital improvement program, CIP, and integration into the fiscal year 25 budget. And this will go to Beltrans.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So before you today is the 5-year capital improvement program. Each year, as part of the budgetary process, the city council should adopt a 5-year capital improvement program. That program actually gets added to every single year. Some projects you'll see are actually beyond the 5-year mark, as noted in the last column on the spreadsheet. In your packet, you did get a list of the capital improvement program projects. These projects can range from sewer, streets, water. They can be parks. They can be, improvements in buildings, improvements to City Hall. There's a whole host of things that can be considered capital improvement projects. So what is the capital improvement program? It's actually a list of the projects that are generally determined through asking department heads. So every year we'll go through the phase in the budgetary process where we actually ask department heads if there are any projects that they would like to see added. And they also have to essentially show where they're going to get that money from so that we can actually program it in. If they think that they're going to get a grant, for instance, in the next couple of years, then we'll put that project a couple of years out so that we can wait for those grant funds to come in and then execute that project once we get those grant funds. So everything in the capital improvement program is actually done by fund. This kind of shows some of these funds are enterprise funds, such as just standard sewer and water funds. Some of these funds are what they would call restricted funds. These restricted funds are funds generally received through development impact fees, and those can only be used for an expansion or new service. So a sewer pipeline, for instance, that is going to serve a new development within the city, we could use actually restricted sewer funds as opposed to just sewer enterprise funds. And those are actually reserved for that purpose. So as you move through, you'll see different things that have to do with street improvement projects, public safety projects, quality of life projects such as parks, the water system, the wastewater system. Now, all of these generally are conforming, I would say, to the general plan, especially our transportation, circulation plan, those types of things, water master plan, sewer master plan, storm drain master plan. All of these things go into putting this capital improvement list together. And so those right now we are in the middle of a wastewater and storm drain master plans. And so those will be coming to you in the first quarter of next calendar year. And those will have a whole new list of capital improvement projects that will get integrated into the CIP program. Not necessarily something that we're going to do right away, but something that we will end up doing in the future as funds permit. So as we look forward, a couple of things I want to point out. The Planning Commission did recommend approval 3-1. And then we've also got the other thing is you'll notice that this is from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 28. Normally, this would be a fiscal year 25 to 29 budget or capital improvement program. But with the way that we had to get the carryovers done and all of that, we had to make this for 24 to 28. So the one you'll see when it comes in the budget will be fiscal year 26 through fiscal year 30. And you'll see that as part of the budgetary process for this next fiscal year. So with that, if you have any questions on projects, anything like that, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the chambers or attending on Zoom that would like to comment on this item?
Thank you for your patience with me. I was just interested about the timeline and expected benefits of the improvements proposed in the capital improvement program, particularly regarding any impact on parks and recreational spaces in Ceres.
Thank you for your question. So a lot of our parks and recreation projects actually came from the American Rescue Plan Act. And so in that fund, we're actually just completing Ochoa Park. We just completed Smyrna Park. And so as we get into more things, you'll see in the Neighborhood Parks Fund that there is some money set aside for park improvements. And then as we go through this, you know, I think it's important to note that not only does council have the, you know, council can come to me for adding projects. This is a living document. It's not something that's just set and left alone. And the public can come to us also. And so right now, those are the biggest, you know, park improvements that we've done recently. Those projects, Smyrna Park just finished up, and Ochoa Park is finishing up as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody else? Anybody on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, the public period is now closed. Bring this item back for discussion. And Councilmember Casey, I see your button has been pressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under neighborhood parks, the Lions Park's completely, I mean, it's not there. And then I also have a question on the sewer improvement project. I know that we've contracted with someone to come before us with a proposal to upgrade the sewer system. And this $100 million that's set aside, the 27, 28 year, I think it is. Is that being, are the funds already projected to be there for that? But again, back to the Lions Park, is that a park that we should just, I don't know, declare a surplus or something? You know, it's 25 years old and nothing has happened. Last year we made an improvement of at least cleaning it up for the first time ever. But there's no money there, and I'm just curious. Maybe you answered it already, and that we have the authority to going forward to ask for changes and stuff. But those two things stick out very much to me. The sewer improvement and Lions Park not being there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question, council member. So with regards to the sewer improvements, those are estimated costs. They are out in the future. Those are our essentially best estimates right now as we kind of move through the sewer improvement project as a whole. And those numbers will be getting refined as we move through the design process. As far as funding, those, like I said, those are estimates. And then there will be different types of funding that we will actually come back to council for your approval in order to fund that project in full. So I think that's where the sewer portion is. Lions Park right now is not in the capital improvement program. I believe there was about $800,000 in there a few months ago. Those monies were transferred back to the fund in general. I think 140,000 of them actually got transferred over to Ochoa Park. So with Lions Park, a park that size, you know, we're looking at probably somewhere for a very basic park, not a whole bunch of frills. You're probably looking in between the $8 and $10 million range for a park that size. Obviously, that goes up the more you know, the more amenities that we want to put in a park. And so, you know, right now, can we put it in the you know, estimated cost beyond 27, 28? Yes. And as we get funds, can we allocate them? Yes, we can do that. That would be a decision that this council or new councils would have to make. As I said, like this is a living document. And council member, I didn't hear your first question. Did it have to do with Smyrna Park?
No, it's strictly Lions Park. I mean, and I understand what you're saying, but the point is, it's 25 years old, and up until a few months ago, it was a disgrace to even think it belonged to the city of Ceres. And then the city staff went out there and cleaned it up, and it looks. I mean, it looks as good as any dirt lot can look. But the point being, nothing has happened. Apparently, the people that bought homes there thinking there was going to be a park have given up on it. They haven't been before the council, to say, well, hey, what's going on? It just seems to be, again, I'm predicting after the rain and in the fall, it'll be just like it was before. We need to keep it at least clean. And then the other question I asked, and maybe you answered it, and maybe the presentation before may have covered it, but the sewer improvement and water improvement that's going to be needed for these thousands of homes that are in these two great big development areas, if they come before 2028, how are we going to take care of the water needs and the sewer needs? And, Ceres has, unfortunately, a history of that not having it prepared before the homes were built. Just a side note, I'm cleaning up my garage, getting ready for whatever you're supposed to be getting ready for. I came across a newspaper article probably 50 years ago, pretty close to 50 years ago. I ran for city council, and the big problem was the Booth Road area. They didn't have any water pressure. Sewers weren't working right. So I would hope that we do something before we start building these homes. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenda Vieira.
Okay, I have a couple questions. I noticed on page 430, it just says CDBG project, but there's no title. I was just kind of curious what that was for. And then if that was part of the downtown thing that we had talked about prior. When it comes to the water line, I didn't know if it was under maybe a different title regarding the lift station at Crow's Landing and Service Road. And then lastly, I just wanted to confirm this had already been approved by Planning Commission, like you stated, and just to confirm if they had any recommendations, adjustments, or anything that they wanted or recommended prior to sending it to council.
Thank you for your question. So the lift station at Crow's Landing, that is actually being done in the Crow's Landing Road Rehabilitation Project. So that's something that, as you'll see, when you have a single project that spans multiple funds, for instance, you'll see in the sewer fund that there's a Crow's Landing Road Rehabilitation. It's because we are using sewer funds, and that's the name of the project when it comes down to that. As far as the lost my train of thought.
The
CDBG project. The CDBG project are CDBG funds that are actually sitting in an account currently. We do have Morrow Village that's going to be going on. Right now, you'll see some of these kind of oddball projects that really don't belong to anything really. And that was just something that was done prior. We used to have a lot of like annual rehabilitate a well or annual rehabilitate a street, but it wasn't specified. And so when we're trying to clean up all of those things as we go, it just takes a lot of time working a lot with finance. They have seen the wrath of all of my budget transfers, trying to really clean things up and make sure that we are doing that. So when the CIP comes back to you guys as part of the budgetary process, we will clean more and more of that up as we bring it back. Last question.
I just confirmed that the planning commission didn't have any recommendations or changes that they wanted to submit to the council prior to approval.
So there were none in their formal recommendation to the council. The one dissenting member felt that the capital improvement project or program was not fiscally responsible. But other than that, there were no actual recommendations to the council other than the recommendation for approval.
Thank you.
Any more additional comments or questions from the council? Bring this item back for motion.
All right, so I'd like to motion to approve resolution approving the 5-year from 2024 to 2028 capital improvement program, the CIP, and integrated into the fiscal year 25 budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Casey,
No.
Councilmember Vieira,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Silvera,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1.
Item number 15, this is a discussion item, so there will be no action required. Discussion on the status of the SR 99 Service Mitchell Road Interchange Design Review and Conceptual Alternatives. Beltrans.
Good evening, council. We'll get the presentation up real quick. Okay, so many years ago, we started the Service and Mitchell interchange project. So we're going to go over a brief background or history, what the current project is, what the potential project is looking like, and then a recap and any questions that you or the public may have. So back in 2003 and 2006, we executed a couple different contracts with, at the time was Nolte and Associates. They are now known as NV5. Since that time, there's actually been 13 different amendments. Those amendments are for PAED, which is a project approval and environmental documents. There was a biological amendment, and then there were a few design amendments also. In total, those amendments right there are approximately $11.5 million. The project report was approved in 2017. That project report had design alternatives in it. It had 3 alternatives. One was do nothing. Another one was a standard interchange, and the other one, which was the selected alternative, was the diverging diamond interchange. Then came along Measure L in 2016. We entered into a contract for some reimbursement of those funds for the design portion of this project. We did a CEQA revalidation in 2018, and then we just executed a contract, I don't know, probably about 7 months ago with a right-of-way consultant. They have done very little work at this time. Just as we're looking at going through this design review, we wanted to make sure that we were using funds in the most appropriate way. The design review was done and approved by this council. It was done by Dokken Engineering. And so with that design review, they looked at a couple of different things. One were cost-saving measures on the current project, which is the diverging diamond interchange. When Dawkin looked at that, they were really looking for just cost savings within the current design. And that cost savings that they found was about $25 million. One of the big things with the diverging diamond interchange when it was first approved was roughly $120 to $135 million. It's important to note that any project that lasts 20 plus years generally becomes very expensive, and it becomes very difficult to build. And in this case, the project costs, blew up to $220 to $250 million. And by the time we probably get to construction, be somewhere approaching the $300 million range. So that amount of money is just not feasible. It's not feasible for Measure L regional. It's not feasible for grant funding. It just becomes a project that is really too big. And there's a few things related to that, and one of those is moving the main line of Highway 99. So the current project actually moves the freeway 80 feet about to the east. It's a huge cost, generally somewhere in the $100 to $125 million just in that cost. And it's a lot of time. And so that was one of the biggest hindrances of this current project, was moving that main line. You look at other places where they're rerouting the freeway. It's a project that generally takes years to complete because of how they have to phase the project, move traffic, get the new freeway poured. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it. So this really came, how feasible is this project? And when it comes down to it, this current design it's just not feasible. So in the design review, we not only looked at cost saving measures, which, like I said, were about $25 million. They also proposed a new conceptual design. So when you look at the new conceptual design, we've cut costs to somewhere in between $85 and $105 million, which could be a project savings of $150 to $200 million. Now, this does not include right-of-way. So there's probably about $15 million in right-of-way that we're going to need to purchase as we move through this project. So this is a snapshot of what that potential project could be. And I say potential because as we move through this process, we're going to have to go back out for a request for qualifications. We're going to have a competitive process for somebody to write a supplemental project report, write a supplemental environmental document. We've got to re-engage with Caltrans. I think it's important to note that both Caltrans and StanCog have both seen this potential project. And when they look at it, I mean, a lot of what they're looking at is the potential costs. Is it feasible for us to actually construct? And while it looks like it's much wider than the diverging diamond interchange, the actual costs are significantly less just due to the complexity. We're not moving the main line. The freeway stays exactly where it is. There's obviously, this is not your typical, what I'd call a typical interchange by any means. However, it does get us to a cost point that is actually feasible for us to construct using, our local funds, Measure L regional funds, and grant funding that actually, will support the project. With any grant funding, no matter who it is, they want to see a completed project. And that's what this allows us to do. This actually utilizes the existing service road bridge. So you can see the green in between the two yellow on going over Highway 99, that's actually preserving and widening the existing bridge. It gives us some phasing options. And so those are things that we're going to look at also. Do we need to build it all in one fell swoop, or can we, phase this out so that we can make it even more economical, yet still accomplish the goal of what we're trying to do? So this is a potential. Like I said, when we go back through the supplemental project report, there's lots of refinement that still needs to be done. So there's still a lot of work to do when it comes down to it. So with this project, right now it's a 20+ year project. It's important that we look at what the feasibility is to actually have a constructible project, and what alternatives we can use. I would estimate that going through a supplemental environmental document, a supplemental project report, and redesigning this is going to cost somewhere in the $5 to $6 million range. But the point is to actually get it built and to have it designed not over another 20-year period, but to really have it designed so that we can get to construction sometime in the late 2020s, early 2030. So we would have somewhere we would call an open to traffic date somewhere in the 2032 range at the latest. So that's really what we're looking at right now. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. The public period is now open. Is there any members of the public who would like to make a comment and/or questions? Yes, sir.
So there's no timeline on this? Just, you're talking about years ago, up to 20 years. What happens after that?
So I would say that when we're looking at a time frame right now, I would essentially send out a request for qualifications. That would happen probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We would bring that contract back after we go through the entire process, making sure that we're doing everything by the federal book because we're going to need federal funds. So that contract would probably come back sometime to council in March as we move through that entire process. From there, we would begin engaging with all of our consultant team, and we would engage with Caltrans and StanCog. At that point, they'd start to prepare a project report, a supplemental project report, and then go into our supplemental environmental document and then in through design. Most of that would run concurrently, as we would be engaged with Caltrans to make sure that them and their headquarters are on board with what we are doing. At that point, once we get through design, I would say design is probably going to take somewhere in the 12 to 18 month range. So, you'd be looking at probably the end of 26, beginning of 27, that the design would be complete. We would also be looking at grant funding at that time and acquiring right-of-way, and then moving into construction, hopefully, like I said, in between 2028 and 2030, which then would put open to traffic sometime in 2032.
And along with this, the west side of the freeway will be widened, correct?
Correct. So we will widen what is required to be widened by the project. And then on the west side, you also have the Copper Trails development that should be getting annexed here soon. And when they start building, they will also be required to do the widening of Service Road also. If we had to widen it, then there would obviously be a reimbursement agreement so that they do pay their fair share of what their responsibility is also.
So planning and engineering years ago, which probably 10 years ago, I was talking to him about this particular thing, about how the traffic, and people talk about the traffic on Service Road on the west side, that they were going to widen it to 6 lanes. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but a lot of those people along there, they have property and stuff, and they're going to have to negotiate buying their property from. So that's something else probably going to take a long time too, correct?
So I don't ever see Service Road being 6 lanes there.
Well, 4.
I see it being 4.
Yeah.
And with what the school district has done already, there's enough for 4 lanes there. And as those developments come in, they'll be required to dedicate. We won't be required to purchase that land. They'll be required to, as a condition of their developments generally, is to dedicate land and to widen the road with their money, not with the city's money.
Will any of those properties be subject to public domain?
I wouldn't want to speak on whether there would be eminent domain or not at this point in time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
Hello, my name is Mateo Torres Pichardo. Currently, I attend Stan State, and I am here to ask a question on this particularly. So my question is, what is the exact goal for widening the freeway there? So I guess what I'm trying to ask is it in order to like reduce traffic or?
Thank you for your question. So really the goal is to allow for better circulation within that area. The Mitchell interchange is really kind of a half interchange at this point that does not function very well at all. Mitchell is also a major corridor, not only into Ceres, but actually into the Modesto industrial area. And then service will allow for better circulation of that area as we grow and develop. The west side of Ceres has 2 very big developments that could have major traffic impacts, and so we won't be widening the freeway at all. The freeway will stay the same, other than adding an auxiliary lane for an on-ramp or an off-ramp. But when it comes down to it, it is for the circulation of the general area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Have anything to do with it, but they said that some time ago they were going to put a bridge for all the trucks to get off of Mitchell and put them over on the other Faith Home Road and put it all the way through. You know anything about that?
Not an additional bridge. No, I don't know. I would have to look into it, but I don't know of any plan to put an additional bridge in anywhere at this point in time.
Ma'am, can you speak your name into the mic for the record?
Reeves.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first name.
Catherine.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Is there anybody online?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
No emails?
There are no emails received.
Okay, the public period is now closed, but bringing this back to the council. Councilmember Rosana Vieira.
Thank you. And again, I guess my question is somewhat connected to this. I thought there was some word about the county expanding Service Road as well. And is that going to be integrated with this project?
I don't believe that it'll be integrated with this project. The county just does have jurisdiction on some of Service Road. And I would presume that if they had development that occurred in that area, that they would require their developments also to expand Service Road to its full width on their property frontages.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions from the council? Okay, like I said, this is a discussion item only. Thank you very much. Moving on to council member referrals. Being that Councilmember Martinez is not here, his referral will be moved on. That is for the carport. So look out for that. Is there any members of the council currently that would like to add an item on the referral list? Seeing none. Moving on to reports. I have nothing to report. Council? Okay, seeing none. Thank
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to report.
you very much. Move.
Tomorrow's the Stanislaus Homeless Alliance meeting, so I should have an update at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, is there any reports from the management team? Actually, not the management team. Let's do city manager.
No, sir.
Take that back. City attorney, the departments. None? All happy faces? Everybody's good? Okay. County Board of Supervisors not here? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We now adjourn to a closed session. Public Employment Performance Evaluation, California Government Code, Section 54957B1, Title City Manager and City Attorney. Conference with Labor Negotiator, California Government Code 5495766A. Agency Designated Representative City Manager Douglas D. Dunford. Employee Organization, Serious Police Officer Association. First Line Supervisors Confidential Bargaining Group. Labor's International Union of the North LiUNA. Mid Managers Bargaining Group and Public Safety Managers. God bless everybody. Let's open it up for anybody who has a comment to make on this closed session. Seeing none. Thank you. Hello, welcome back. Council has been given direction. Thank you.